Thumbs up, yeah, okay, great. Thanks all for coming. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the peoples of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also acknowledge that Aboriginal sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Richard Adamson and I'm on the board of the Independent Brewers Association, and I have the remit of people, which covers workplace health and safety, training, wellbeing and diversity. And today we're going to be focusing on the workplace wellbeing and diversity. I've got an amazing panel for you to hear from this afternoon, and I'd like to start with Roxy. Here to my right, Roxy has been working in the beer industry in Melbourne and Perth for more than a decade. She's worked in beer sales, distribution, training and events. But her love for hospitality has made her particularly valuable in hospitality management, specifically in the role of people and culture. She currently holds the dream role of Head of People and Culture at Stomping Ground Brewing Co. And the local tap house. Just had the passion fruit smash, which was delicious. She's passionate about personal and professional development and is constantly working to improve the people, processes and training pathways in her role. Do you have a microphone? I think it's probably, might have to share one. I'm sorry.
Passing them along.
COVID safe, of course. Stomping Ground does have an amazing culture. How important is the culture to the organisation?
Culture is everything. It's we talk about this a lot in terms of. Oh, sorry. Thank you for having me. Also, I should start off. Hello. Culture really is everything. At the moment, we talk about this a fair bit. That having good beer is kind of like table stakes at the moment. If you don't have good beer, you're not really amongst the conversation. But to make great beer and consistently great beer, you need great people. And you need to have a great culture around that. So having people who understand what your values are, who understand how their role relates to what your values are and your company goals and where you're going and exactly how their role is going to help you achieve that is super important.
Okay, and what are the sort of key drivers or metrics you think in terms of measuring the success of what you're doing in terms of your role and how the culture in the company is going?
I feel like there's been a lot of change over the last year into how we would actually measure that. Retaining staff is huge, but having staff who are really engaged is so important. I think aligning the values in between staff and what you're doing is great. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Is there any key metrics? Is there anything you kind of look at?
At the moment, we're looking at putting together competency matrix for each of the roles and making people aware that there might be a base level of their role, but what is next? What is the next thing that they can develop? And it might not mean a promotion or a salary increase or something, but it just is a development in their own sort of career progression. But having an understanding that maybe not everybody wants that. Maybe some people just want to be really great at their job and get great job satisfaction. So making sure that those people are looked after as well.
Okay, and what are the sort of things that Stomping Ground do? What sort of things do you have in place around your workplace culture and the well-being of staff?
There are things that we're bringing in all the time. I don't think it's something you can be static with. Some of the things that we're doing at the moment I'm trying to put through engagement surveys to really check in with the staff about how they feel and what they are enjoying as being part of our workplace. Having quarterly staff get-togethers, just really simple things that can keep your team engaged. Communication is massive. Always, even if we were talking in the last panel, even if there's nothing to say, just updating your staff on what's going on or that things are still the same are really, really key to having engaged and happy people as well.
And look, in terms of workplace wellbeing, it really is an important factor in terms of the success of a company as well. Like, what's the downside of having a bad culture? People not sticking around and.
I feel like I'm being interviewed right now for a job interview. You're drilling me. I guess kind of tying back to diversity, what we're talking about today in the panel as well, is the dynamics of having a diverse workforce, and that isn't just about your male, female, gender differences. It's about having diversity of thought. So that could be different age groups, different backgrounds, different education. Different nationalities, like everything comes into difference of thought, which is really important sort of piece to look at. You have a sort of stagnant workforce and you can end up with a stagnant business if you're not including all of your customer base in your staff base as well. You're not thinking about how you can appease to the other people that are all around you and make part of your business.
Okay, and look, Melbourne went down through an extended lockdown. What's it been like having people come back into the workforce, and after your hospitality business wouldn't have been operating during that period? What's that been like?
I was actually on parental leave for the majority of lockdown last year, so don't feel like I'm as much of an expert on this topic as others may be, but coming out of it, definitely everyone had sort of reassessed what was important to them. We had to make sure that we were staying in touch with our team, really checking in on what they wanted, how we could help them to achieve their perhaps new goals or a new work-life balance. It was a really different style of service than we were used to as well. So when we came back, there was, we had to reopen within our means and what was going to be sustainable for us. But you're having to be really conscious of hygiene, of course, taking bookings, saying no to people, turning over tables, doing table service, which we might not have been used to before. Meanwhile, the production team had been working all the way through. So there was real, conflicts of people feeling guilty that they had a job for the whole time, people who were actually enjoying not working, maybe like a lot of chefs not working for the first time in their career, taking up yoga. It was really interesting, but we had to make sure that we were engaging with everyone in the way that they wanted. So respecting that some people were really happy to not have any contact. Maybe they wanted some space. We just had to respect that. And I think that's kind of a good learning that we've taken as well, is to continue that post COVID.
I guess people came back with different priorities, and in some ways too, just adjusting to coming back to work, as you're saying, was a tough one for a lot of people. Yeah. It's interesting you say you'll take some of those learnings forward, I think, as you manage your people as well. And it's interesting that I think well-being has become more of a focus, and certainly as business owners, we're understanding more that it does, this part of the business is super critical to what we do.
Yeah, being so aware of each individual's circumstances, like we're all acutely aware that last year affected all of us in completely different ways, so it affected all of our team in completely different ways. Like I was saying, some people actually thrived and some people didn't, so yeah, continuing that understanding of each person is really important.
Great, well thank you, Roxy. I'm sure you'll have some questions from the floor after we introduce everybody else and have a little chat, so thanks for the insights.
My interview's over.
It wasn't too tough, was it? I would like to introduce Louise Weine from NAWO. Louise is passionate about people and focused on innovative workplace change for high performance. Louise brings 26 years of operational human resources, change management experience in manufacturing and global business to support individuals and organisations in creating truly inclusive workplaces. In Louise's role as CEO for the non-profit association NAWO.
Say NAWO.
NAWO. Say NAWO. I'll say that from now on. Louise leads a network of individuals and organisations who support and activate better gender balances in operations. NAWO's membership is drawn from a broad range of operational industries such as manufacturing, logistics, supply chain, it's pretty much brewing there, all those things. Utility, agriculture, resources, transport, construction, property management, and professional services. Louise calls Melbourne home and is parent to 3 daughters and her 2 partner, Reg. Louise loves spending time with family and friends. Robust conversation, occasional beer.
Jesus, I gave you that refined bio, and now I'm like, geez, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board.
I thought it was fantastic.
Shorten it completely. Oh, dear.
Louise, tell us about your organisation.
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, that's a very long intro. Sorry about that. NAWO's a network of organisations and amazing people who are all aligned to our vision, which is to see gender diversity valued and balanced at every level in operations. And our church, if you like, the Church of Operations for us is a very broad one, as you've heard. There's lots of industries incorporated into that. We're basically everything except for health, education, and sort of the front end of retail and hospitality, but the back end of those industries are very operational, as you know, supply chain oriented, so they're all involved. We've got 60 businesses that are members of NAWO. We reach about 10,000 people through our database, but technically through all of those businesses we have a opportunity to reach a lot more people. And that's really compelling because it's a multi-industry, diverse audience that we've got for the conversation that we want to have, which is all about how can we have more diverse, inclusive workplace cultures that enable us to have these fantastic, diverse teams that we know, because the research absolutely backs it up, leads to better business results, better workplace engagement, happier people, and safer workplaces too. The data is really showing as well. So we are specifically focused on gender. There's no hiding that, but diversity broadly is very important to us, and certainly diversity in the gender conversation is really important to us. So people of cultural and linguistic background who are also at the intersection of gender and called, they've got extra things to bear. Same for LGBTIQ women who have extra things that have to deal with at that intersection. So everyone in this space is really important to us. What do? We bring people together to have really important conversations about the things that need to change, the systemic barriers. So organisations are getting their heads around this, to differing degrees, some faster than others, but we really like to focus the attention on that rather than on women need to do something different, which has been the historical perspective for this conversation, where it's been like, oh, women have got to do a lot of things to step up, lean in, be more courageous, be more confident, get more leadership development, and so we're changing it up to focus on other things that actually are barriers to entry, like parental leave policy, flexible work, all of the things, that stand in the way of women really getting involved in these industries, which fundamentally we absolutely love. We love these operation spaces. So that's NAWO.
Fantastic. And so on that, so what are the sort of stats looking like for women within organisational roles?
Yeah, so in the industries that we represent, the stats are looking pretty sad, really, I think. So overall, across all of those 8 industries that you rattled off in the intro there, we're looking at about 20% female representation in key management positions, and that's a key metric for us to look at because it's the feeder roles into general management and CEO positions. So that's the one that we really focus on. Overall representation is sitting around the 34% mark. And when you look at the last 5 years in terms of growth and movement in this space, we've seen a 4.4% increase in the number of women in those key management positions, which is, I guess, okay. But we've only seen a 1% increase in overall female representation across all those sectors. So it's glacial, the pace of change. And I guess that's why you see women out protesting and saying enough is enough and doing all of that, because we are really at the point where we're like, 100 years to parity is too far away. I've got 3 daughters, and personally I don't want to have this conversation, going forward. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same. But that's the sort of ops space. I did a little bit of research because I'm not a craft beer expert, but I'm so excited to be here and be learning about this space. And Australian stats are not very available, but I do have US stats, and I'd love people's reactions to these. So a 2020 survey said that 77% of breweries were owned by men, 90% of production staff were men, and there was a more balanced picture in front of house service, which makes sense. But less than 24% of employees in the sector were from BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous people of colour in the US, so I would hazard a guess that our stats are sort of not too dissimilar, but we're maybe doing a bit better in the production staff. Anyway.
Yeah, I think they're probably pretty similar, just from a feeling perspective, not really knowing anything more.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what we can do. What are some of the actions breweries can carry out to improve gender balances within their businesses?
So I see this as such a huge sector for opportunity. I really do, and this is only from a very, when did you call me to be part of this panel? I've been looking at websites and looking at what you guys all do, and I just really think that there's a growing consumption pattern amongst women in beer. This is really awesome, and the whole vibe that you've got in this sector is really contemporary, it's uplifting, it's exciting, it's new age. So I think you've got a huge opportunity here, first and foremost. But you are fighting against a bit of that traditional stereotype in the industry. I mean, we've come, from the Vic Bitter ads of the good old days where, what were we doing? We were hard-earned thirst. You get it shooting, you get it hunting. So we're coming from a pretty extreme base, but I think there's really exciting opportunities. And what I think that you can do, and this falls or sort of speaks to NAWO's model that we've got in place to help you roadmap change that you can make. So we call it the NAWO 9 levers for gender balance. And the first layer, for example, is leadership and communication, which Roxy spoke to beautifully. And the fact that she says culture is just number one, I mean, that shows you what an awesome opportunity you've got here. Role modelling, leadership and the power of a bloody good story, I think, is your number one thing that you can do. And there's no stopping you. You can go out and you are already doing this, but do more of it. So share stories that demonstrate how your business has an unwavering commitment to inclusion and diversity. Share what's great about the industry and highlight the skills required to work in it. And don't be too try and make those skills sets more less prescriptive and more exciting, if that makes sense. So I've kind of highlighted some: innovation, problem solving, entrepreneurship, collaboration, teamwork. They're exciting skill sets, right? If you start talking about the micro skill sets that you need for brewing, that may be off-putting to people who have never done that before in their lives and think that they might not be capable of it. So that would be my watch point, is be careful not to be too prescriptive in your job ads. Be less prescriptive at the start, and you can always, train for some of those things down the track. And share stories that articulate the benefits of diverse teams, not only internally with your own people, but externally. So where you've actually innovated, problem solved, come up with a new fantastic tasting beer because of the diversity on your team and what they've come up with. So that's the first thing. I mean, that's just one of the list that I've developed here of all the things you can do that will just make a huge difference. Be loud and proud about what you've got here.
I think that's fantastic, and I think the power of stories is a really good one to harness, and I'm glad you see it as a really positive opportunity, I think, and being able to cast off some of that old marketing that was, purposely excluding half of the population is really freeing in many ways, and the more women we can bring to craft beer as customers, the more successful we're going to be, and we need to see, I guess, that reflected within the workplace as well. Tell us more, though. I'm sure you've got more. You've got more.
I've got so much more. I think another sort of key subheading for me would be challenge how well you support work-life integration for people. And this is not just for women, this is for men. More and more young men want to be active parents, to be involved at home, to be sharing the care with their partners. And you need to really look at the policies that wherever you're getting your policy advice from. Do those policies enable people to share the care? Are you encouraging men to take parental leave just as actively as you would support women? And how do you support people who are going on and returning from parental leave so that they can actively stay engaged with the workplace? I recently spoke to somebody actually who had a really left field to me, coming out of corporate for a long time, but he was saying, why don't we just get rid of this immediate bias towards leave as the solution for people being able to care for their families? Like we basically say to people, if you want to care for your children, just leave, go away, because we don't want you here while you're caring for your children. And I thought that's a really interesting perspective. And he was sort of suggesting, why don't businesses think more about, helping people get au pairs or nannies or, in-home care support so that people can actually be more attentive at work and not be running to and from childcare centres and things. So that was just one suggestion that came out of that little conversation. So I guess my message to you is be creative, think outside the square a little bit. You are a young, innovative sector. Why not be innovative with these kind of policies as well and really stand out from the crowd, because that's going to attract not only great women but awesome men as well. And then I do have here, get the basics right. So do your values that you've got for your business, do they fundamentally reflect inclusion and diversity? So is there a specific value like, respect, that really speaks to what you need to do to have an inclusive workplace? If not, how can you rejig them to make sure that you have got that? And how do you hold people account in how they behave at work in relation to that value every day? So if you've got, shitty language, excuse the language, around the place.
You can say that, it's okay.
But, different to that, but disrespectful language in the workplace, and it's become a norm, that's going to be an issue. How are your basic amenities? And I hate to have to cover this, and it might not be relevant to you guys, I hope it's not, but the operations that I walk into, often people, women, for example, there was one workplace that I was in, it took me 20 minutes to walk to the female toilets. So by the time I'd got there to do what I needed to do, get changed, whatever, and have my lunch, that was pretty significant barrier. Uniforms, if people are required to wear uniforms, are they, amenable to all kinds of body shapes and diversities? And if you do have co-working sort of kitchen spaces, here's a question to ask yourself: who generally cleans them up? And if the answer is, well, the only woman on my team is the one that comes in every day and puts the dishwasher on and makes sure it's all stacked correctly, sorry, that's one of my pet peeves, then you've got something going on there that you need to work out. So there are a few fundamentals, and just one more before, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm hogging the microphone, but I do have to talk about this one because it is absolutely prevalent in Australian workplaces, whether we like to think it or not, and this is sexual harassment in the workplace. So according to the Australian Human Rights Commission, 39% of workers in the accommodation and food industries who took part in their survey in 2018 have experienced sexual harassment, and fewer than 1 in 5 people made a formal workplace complaint about sexual harassment. So not only are 1 in 5 people being sexually harassed in the workplace, they're not all telling us that that's going on as employers. So, and 1 in 5 of those who did report were labelled as a troublemaker, they were victimised, ignored, or they resigned. So leadership from you in this space is necessary and important. And there are a number of recommendations in the Human Rights Commission Respect at Work report that you can really take on board and do. And if you want to contact me, I've got a fact sheet that I can immediately send you of how your policies should be rejigged to make sure that you're doing this really well. So I think there are a few things. If you can do those, I reckon you'll smash it. There's no reason why you can't get 2,000 women into those brewing jobs, Richard.
That we need to get fulfilled if we're going to make the difference, that can fill the gap between 8 and 15% in the next 5 years. That's how many people we need to employ in the brewing part alone. That's right. Louise, don't feel like you're taking up too much time. This is valuable information. We're so blessed to have you here. I guess finally before we move on and talk to Scott, how can breweries get involved with NAWU?
Oh look, we've just revamped our membership and we've got a new website coming soon. So if you go to our website currently, it's a bit old and clunky, but our new one is awesome. And we do have a new membership tier coming into play, which is for businesses with less than 150 employees, which might be of interest. That enables you to have 50 employees registered as actual NAWO members and gives them access to a whole lot of activities and conversations, importantly, around this topic. And that's your frontline leaders, it's your men, your women, your senior people, every function. It's really accessible, it's a great community, and yeah, when we're up live on hopefully the 8th of June with our new website, you can go on there and check it out. It's just nawo.org.au.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'm sure you'll have some more questions following as well. Scotty Kay, we'll move on to you. Scotty is one of the more well-known people, I think, in Crafty Pint, I think. More than one of the more well-known people from Craft.
Not as well as some, but yes, definitely well.
I think so, because you are an industry veteran that has been around for 25 years in the craft beer industry. Craft beer industry the last 9 years. Works behind the scenes in Crafty Pint. You mentioned here James Smith wrangling as part of your role.
I am, and it's a very hard job sometimes.
Yeah, I don't envy you in that part of it. Started working at Crafty in the mid 2018. Worked as a beer rep for Old Wives Ales and Square Keg. You say here you do not. You're a proud member of the LBGTI community, but you don't see yourself as an activist. You want an amazing beer industry to welcome and attract emerging and diverse voices. And away from work, you spend time with your partner discovering Melbourne's rich bar and hospitality offerings, which we all love. Movies, music, I love live music as well. And repairing a 1980s Mercedes.
Pretending to be a mechanic.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not very good.
So thank you for being part of the panel. Look, I guess you probably came to the stage in many people's minds around an article titled "What's the Damage?" For those that maybe haven't read it, do you want to just maybe recap a little bit of that story?
Yeah, I think it's something, if you get a chance, try to read it on the Crafty Pint, of course. It happened June 2018. One of the breweries had a little bit of a misstep. It happens sometimes, but it seemed to be a hell of a misstep, and it was basically focusing on attacking, well, not really attacking, but really alienating some people of the LGBT community. It was basically a meme that was put up in reference to no alcohol beers, and basically it referred to it as gay lemonade. That's not a particularly horrendous homophobic thing to do, but it creates a space then which is really, really unpleasant. I firmly believe that we are an amazing, amazing industry, and I don't want to come out here and be sounding like I'm shitting on the industry. I love this industry. It's probably one of the best out there, and we're about 98% there. But there are still some things that are out there some dark corners that, you know, sometimes there is homophobia or sexism or ableism or even sometimes racism. And we sort of have to get rid of that. Basically, I'm a person that doesn't usually comment on social media sort of things. I try to keep that separate. But I felt compelled to get involved when this post came out from this brewery. And I basically went through, it took a long time for them to take it down. And when they did take it down, it was an apology that was almost like, sorry that you're offended, if that makes sense. And I don't think that that's good for our industry. I want to make sure that we've got an industry that everyone is able to come into, and I don't want anyone feeling bad about that. Going back to the post, they took the post down, they gave their apology, but it's almost like going into the bush and lighting a match and starting a fire. You can pick up the match and go, oh, I'm sorry about that match, but the fire just keeps on going. So the comments then are really, really quite offensive from the people that are defending that brewery and their, you know, non-offensive joke, or they think that it's not an offensive joke. And so you then, you know, get people getting really quite offensive. I don't believe that there's a political correctness gone wrong thing happening here. You're allowed to say what you can say, but there are going to be consequences to it. And, you know, it may be freedom of speech, but it's not freedom for repercussions. So for me, it was quite strange. It was pretty painful because I was personally quite attacked on that. And it was quite strange because I commented on this page and started to put statistics. So for example, LGBTQI, I like to use the word queer. I hope everyone's all right with that. I prefer to use the word queer. But between 16 and 27 are 5 times more likely to consider suicide. Trans, 15 times. So for me, I want to make sure that this space is getting as many people in as possible and making them feel as comfortable as possible. Yeah, so I was basically going through and commenting under the comments that were there saying, this is what you've created. These ugly comments of what you created. You did this post, you deleted it, but now you created this ugliness. And not only that, then the mainstream media picked it up as well. So when the mainstream media picked it up, they reported again, and then you get the same trolls going, it's political correctness gone wrong. They're snowflakes. What are they worried about? All these same things, and that is just over and over. It just repeats itself, this cycle. So for me, it was a pretty rough few days. They deleted all my comments in reference to trans and young people's suicide rates, but they left all the comments about me that people were making personally. So for me, that made no sense. Something that we did, we were trying to figure out, I'm generally not part of the editorial team. I work sort of behind the scenes a bit more in advertising and listings, etc. And we really tried to figure out what's the best way. We like to try and make the industry better wherever we can at the Crafty Pint. And James gave me some questions that I was able to sort of answer, and I helped participate in this article, and I encourage you all to check it out and really see what the impact of something that, you know, someone considered quite meaningless and quite harmless, in actual fact, what are the consequences of that? So yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you for that. It's really appreciated. I think we've talked about that. What can the impact of exclusionary actions be on well-being? I think you've covered that pretty well.
Yeah, 100%. As I said, like those stats are pretty scary. When you actually start to look at it and you look at the statistics of someone who is part of the LGBTQI community, and I think it's after the age of 18, within their lifetime, there is 74% of people that will consider taking their own lives. So I feel like it is an important thing that we need to have inclusion, we need to be felt welcome in this industry. So yeah, that's one of the big things. I
was going to ask you, on a sort of a practical level, I guess, what can breweries do to be more welcoming to the queer community?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that we can do just from a physical sort of thing. We can make sure that toilets are addressed, those sort of things, uniforms, as you sort of mentioned before. Some breweries, I think I saw someone who actually in their email signature had "these are my pronouns," which is really, really quite important. Was it you?
Both Roxy and Louise, I think, yes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So I started to think about that the other day. It was just like, and the way they encourage it is that the head of your organisation start to do this. Why is there this reliance on trans people to have to do that? And I feel like that's one big thing that can change. Your language obviously is quite important. If you're going to get things wrong, like pronouns, it's okay to get things wrong. If you're not being intentionally malicious, most people are going to be fine if you're trying. I tend to think that most people are a little bit uncertain, don't want to get it wrong, and so they don't even try. So I think that's really, really important. I read some statistics recently that it's about 50% in your workplace that haven't even come out or don't want anyone to know. So you've got to make sure that it's a comfortable environment, even though they may not be as visible as it is. And I think another big thing is confidentiality. Making sure that you're dealing with situations in a confidential way, that you're not, hey, this is Scott, our resident homosexual, or you know, those sort of things. You don't, even though someone may be out, it's never anyone else's right to out someone, because you might not be feeling secure at that time, that sort of thing. You don't sort of do those things. And sort of going back to that language thing as well, most of the time it's a mistake or it's just a misstep. It's not like posting a horrible meme. Talk to that person aside from the other people. You know, make it respectful, that sort of thing. We need to be engaging and getting people on board as opposed to alienating and upsetting people for getting it wrong.
Yeah, and I think that we were talking about that over the phone, about there was an article in Channel 7 News, which I detest, on their social media, saying that a particular movement was trying to ban the words mum and dad. And when you actually read the position paper, that wasn't the case at all. They were just saying maybe you can take the cues from people you talk to in terms of what they're comfortable with, and maybe don't assume. And again, it's okay if you get it wrong, as long as you're trying. That's the main thing. So this idea of political correctness and banning words is not what we're talking about at all, is it?
100%, and it's just, we've got a long way to go still, but it's very small things that'll help it get there.
Yeah, common decency would be a good place to start.
Well, yeah, just respect when it comes down to it. It's not political correctness. It's just respect. It's respecting other people, no matter what.
Yeah, and you were talking about maybe forming a group and organisation. Is that something you want to talk about now? Or?
Yeah, it is something that I kind of need my ass to get kicked a bit more to get it moving. But basically, when this happened, I really wanted an organisation to actually step up and call this sort of shit out within our industry. And I feel like Pink Boots do this amazing sort of stuff for women within our industry, and it was sort of like, I suppose, a thing initially, so that instead of me or someone like me getting targeted, that the organisation calls this stuff out and can actually guide things. But then I actually sort of developed it a bit further, and I think there needs to be a social aspect to it. when it comes down to it, I think that there needs to be a lot more visibility within our industry, because when it comes down to it, we're really, really small as it is. We need to be attracting as many people as we can in our workplaces, and of course that translates also into making our venues more comfortable, our brand more comfortable for people, so that they can drink more beer, basically. We want more people drinking good beer. And
amazing. That's
so
exactly it.
It blows my mind why you would sort of alienate a group for sales to go for like a more lad market, or, you know, it's quite strange. But yeah, hopefully by this time next year, we'll be up and going with that. It'll be a social sort of thing, but it will also be an industry guidance thing, to make sure that we're getting more people transitioning to different parts of the craft beer industry, as well as people trying to break into the craft beer industry. And hopefully we'll do some fundraising as well to maybe do some courses and that sort of thing to help people out. So yeah, hopefully I'll have an update for you in a year's time that'll be a little bit better than this.
We will look out on Crafty Pint for it, I'm sure. So thank you for that so much. Danny Perera, thank you for joining us as well. Danny is the founder and head brewer of 2 Rupees. Originally from Sri Lanka, immigrated to Melbourne in 2004. 2 Rupees is located in Clayton, which is an industrial area just near Monash University, and was founded in 2019, is that right? 2019. Danny, tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of opening a craft brewery.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, for inviting me here. I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and back then in Sri Lanka, we only got to taste the lagers and a stout. There's a pretty simple drinking culture, and all based on coconut, arak, or toddies. If you travel through Asia, probably you know that what the toddy means. It's like a fermented version of coconut sugar. And that's about it. And then high-end classes, the whiskey culture, that's about it. So 2004, when I migrated here for my higher studies, it's like a match made in heaven. I saw a lot of whiskeys, drinks, beers, and like, all right, here we go, I'm here. And that's how I started. So I was studying hospitality, and then I was lucky enough to find a job in a hospital as well. And through that, I was drinking, I don't know, like all different type of beers, and I started knowing what ales like, to lagers, to stout, to others. And I was living in Hawthorne, and easy to get to Mountain Goat, Moondog, and a few other breweries in the Melbourne. So every time I go there, only thing is, I think, probably like any kid do, first migrant, like I look and they stand still. All right, I want to set up something like that for myself, you know. And that's any young kid's dream, like first migrant. And that's what I did. So drinking, mesmerizing, had a few pints, you know, thinking, I'm going to set up something like that. When the time passed, my business partner came from Sri Lanka, and we used to go to the different breweries, talk to brewers, talk to owners, and get the inside information, like what's like to be in the industry, how much investment involved in there, and that's a kind of like our business plan. And around 2016, we re-registered the company 2 Rupees, and I gotta mention the name of the 2 Rupees because we thought like this brand have to be highlighted, and we can't call anything else, you know, have to be something related to like South Asia. And then through my experience in hospitality industry, all my fellow hospitality workers, some point of their life, they travel through Asia. They've been to Bali, they're family with rupiah, you know, they've been to Indonesia, they've been to Thailand, India, you know. And then I thought like, rupees is the second largest population. Why not I call that rupees? And Sri Lankan using it, obviously. And there's a great market for it. And Indians everywhere, I'm Sri Lankan, very small community in Melbourne. But Indians everywhere might as well have a market, you know, like a very niche market, but there's a market in there. So that's where the 2 Rupees name come up from. and 2 partners and rupees as a coin. So that's why we registered the company, and we didn't have much financial background, so it took 3 years, to 2016 to 19, to set it up, developed, and we figured out ourselves how to brew, and find everything else related to the brewing. And in the meantime, a lot of guys help us in the industry. Like every time we have a question, we rank fellow breweries and ask the questions. Like when you approach with the right question, they will come back with the right answers. So it's a lot of guys help us come to this level, and we've been operating now 2 years, and even though through the COVID we've been survived actually, and more than survived, and we've been successful, and we managed to secure a few tanks and develop our business as well. So it's going good in a way. Through everyone's support.
That's great to hear. I was going to ask you, what was the feeling? What's it feeling like to be part of the Australian craft brewing industry? What's the acceptance been like?
The way I believe it, there's no competition in this industry. Not like any other industry, obviously. No one's trying to take over another brewery. Everyone trying to help each other. I think that's why there are a lot of collabs happening. And everyone, even the brewers or owners, they're trying to, I know a lot of owners now, obviously, met through the industry. Everyone trying to help each other. If you got any problem, especially trying to find a good supplier, or trying to find a good equipment. When you rank them up, says, man, I'm from this brewery, I need help in there, and they get back to you with the right answers. That's a best thing of this industry. I feel I never been alone. That's good in a way, because every time I go to a brewery, says, probably they don't know me, says, I'm Danny from 2 Rupees, we have a small brewery in Clayton, I see new equipment here, I really like this face you supply, and they give all the information without hiding anything. That's really good. I really appreciate that as coming from we don't have much experience in the brewing industry, so coming to the industry, it's very good.
Amazing. And how do you feel, a view of the industry as a whole, how are we doing to broaden the reach of craft beer beyond, I guess, the male white stereotype? What are your feelings on that? Do you think we're starting to get there in terms of broadening the market?
To be honest, I didn't feel like that, to be honest. And the best part is, when you go to any other, I know it's like a white male stereotype kind of thing, but if you ask the right question, not being a smart ass or anything, and you'll get the right answer. And if you're trying to be if you ask in the right manner, if you've been friendly, if you've been in industry so long, if you know what you're doing, if you talk to them nicely, they'll get back to you. So.
And you had we're just talking downstairs, you had a great view of, I think, the ability of beer to bring people together as well.
Yeah, the way I believe it, if I bring a cake here, we got 100 people in different cultures, within 1 hour, when the cake finished, we talk, everyone's hugging each other, cuddling each other, it's talk the same language. And the beer, the way I feel it, it's not going to happen now, maybe another 5 years time. Melbourne is a multicultural hub, and a lot of cultural diversity, a lot of people coming, and everything happening all the time. So, it's people will enjoy the beer. It will connect more people. A good example in Beer Deluxe here, anything, just if you cross the road, this is the week of Lord Buddha, and there's a big celebration out there. It's people coming to visit that they might be come here, and then have a beer. That's the thing. Beer connect people, and connect people mean culture. More people it connect, more culture, and it connect into the industry. So I feel from 2-year experience running a brewery, and I got a lot of South Asian people, young people especially, they born and raised here, not like me though, and they come in and ask the question, Danny, how did you set up? I have a dream to set up something like this, and I like to help them. So I think in the future there will be a few more others like me going to come to the industry. So that's what I feel like.
Fantastic, Danny. Thank you so much for your time and getting off the brew floor and coming to talk with us.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions out from the floor? Yes.
I was just curious, like you mentioned the right way, I guess, to kind of put information on a job ad and kind of have it read more inclusively. I'm curious, like suggestions of where to post them though, where you might garner a wider audience. Like I think we're so used to posting them in the same places all the time, and yeah, just be,
Where do you post?
The Crafty Pint job section is where you post.
So,
You're all sorted.
sorry, I just need to repeat the question because for the folks at home. But yes, it was around posting for job ads and more inclusive language. But maybe if we want to cast the net a bit wider, where it would be post the ads.
Well, I noticed that you've all got quite a good presence on Facebook and stuff. I mean, using your social media is really important for reaching women, and particularly in regional areas. Like, I think there's a real market for talent in regional locations. If you are brewing in those places, then Facebook's a great community to be on. But also thinking a bit laterally, like if you are wanting to recruit more local people, sticking it in the local school newsletter. Like, think a little bit outside the square into where people are looking every day and where women are. I think if you're wanting to recruit more women, you need to think about where are these women. I mean, I've got an example that's not in your industry, but Yarra Trams, they decided to use Facebook to advertise, and they got something like a 70% increase in the number of women that applied for their jobs by just doing that. I mean, they also changed up the look and feel of their ads, so pictures of women and men together. Language, so there are some great language checks you can run your ads through. There's one called Textio, which can tell you if you're writing in a male or a female tone of voice, and that's really important. And then stripping them right back, because women will only apply for jobs where they can meet 95% of the criteria or something wacky like that. I don't know where that comes from or why, but in comparison, the studies show that men will apply for jobs that they only meet 50% of the criteria for. And they go, give it a crack, I'm going to do it. And for some reason, we don't do that. So unfortunately, that means you need to strip away all the hyperbole in those ads that is going to put people off because they can't tick that box. And examples in my industry is like forklift license, right? Used to be on every warehousing job ad, and most women don't have a forklift license, so they just go, well, I can't do that job. It takes 2 weeks and $500, maybe a bit more now, to get someone a forklift license. Or $2. There you go. Thanks. See, the world's changed since I was in Colgate Palmolive. But that was like a classic that we were just like, why are we putting that on job ads? Like, let's just train them in it when they get here. So, yeah.
Great, thanks, Louise. Got one. James? Absolutely. So James's question was just on SMEs and I guess the rapid growth of breweries and how we manage that growth, and then how we manage well-being and culture and diversity within that rapidly growing business. And do we have time to do it? I think it's a necessity myself, but Maybe Roxy, you want to talk to that because you would have been through it.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, particularly, yeah, like you say, we're all very busy and maybe limited resources, but I think you can definitely make it a part of things you're already doing. So hopefully you're already doing reviews, for example, with your staff. So one example with us is the experience is really important to us, and we put in people's role descriptions how their role helps to create a great experience of our brand. And then in their role reviews, we talk about how did they go with doing that. And that's a really simple thing, but it's a huge value of ours, that we make sure we're actually talking about it and make it part of your comms that you do all the time. Language as well. Like, I mean, some things really simple but make a huge impact, like pronouns in email signatures. That didn't take very long to put together, but the impact that's going to have to make everyone feel a bit more included is huge. And we did have to put together some work with some more information so that people understood why it was important and why they even if it seems obvious to others, that it's still important for everyone. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways you can just do it in things you're already doing. And I'm sure you've probably got lots of ways that you're already making that part of your culture. So yeah.
Something I noticed as well when I was sort of researching after you asked me to do this was that in US studies they've actually looked at compliance, whether it be from a legislative point of view, but for more inclusive and diverse workplaces, for people who really took that on as we're just going to do this to be better for our people, they were much more effective in rolling out any of these new things. And so I think that's kind of important. Not only should you be doing it, but you can be much more effective if you do it for all the good reasons as well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Some things can seem like they're taking extra time now, but in the long run, the extra tenure you'll have from your team, or the more efficient you could be, is going to make a huge difference in the long run.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're kind of out of time, so we'll have to wrap it up. But could you all put your hands together and thank my amazing panel here, Roxy, Louise, Scott and Danny, for giving up their time. And if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, we'll be around for a little while for a beer, maybe. Yeah, great. All right, thanks very much.